Attack of the Clones. This movie starts off just... The ship explodes.
Let's say that's the first note I have. The Naboo ship is blown up right away. And someone is trying to kill Amidala.
But Amidala is suddenly not a queen anymore, even though in the last movie she was a queen who was elected. I don't think that's how monarchies work, but, you know.
This is not how monarchies work. Did they even say in The Phantom Menace that she was elected as queen?
That's a good question. I'm sure somebody knows.
It might
listen to this.
Honestly, they might have said something about that, about being elected or being chosen. Because I do remember her saying, like, I wasn't chosen to destroy my people or some shit like that.
I mean, we weren't really paying attention. I mean, you were paying attention to the RAR.
The RAR was the best part. The only other part that I'd say is better than the RAR is when Babu Frick goes, yay!
So we start out with the ship exploding. Some stuff happens, and we meet Anakin as a teenager, finally. And
Anakin is a teenager. The psychopath.
Yeah, he's a very, very hormone-driven teenager. Yeah. But the crazy part is that he actually gets the girl, despite being, you know...
Well, it's like, I feel like it's almost like the Beauty and the Beast kind of thing, where any girl is okay with any guy as long as you lock them in a room with them for long enough.
They have a word for that. What is the disease called?
It's fuck. No, I can't remember it either. I know exactly what
it's not Parkinson's.
It's not Parkinson's. It's definitely not Parkinson's. It's Stockholm syndrome.
Yes,
Stockholm syndrome.
Padme had Stockholm syndrome.
I can 100% believe that because let's see. One of my notes that I made for this movie is that freaking Anakin, he sounds like a psychopath as he talks.
Can you imagine if she rejected him and he turned to the dark side sooner?
It would have definitely made this movie a lot faster.
They hired... I remember seeing a video, and someone was talking about how they want Padme dead, so they hire Jango Fett, who hires someone else, who sends a robot. The robot sends something else. Have you seen that video?
I haven't seen that video. I'm pretty sure that it's because there's a scene where Jango is giving money to the person who has the robot. Yes, because there's a robot that gives. No, is it Jango that gives? I fucking lost now. I'm pretty sure Jango is the one that gives the shapeshifter person the bug things to kill Padme.
Maybe.
I think it is. I'm pretty sure I remember that being a scene.
And then one of the things that kind of baffles me about that whole scene is like whenever the bugs crawling on the bed and stuff, and they kind of just crawl around her without getting on her, and then they're through the whole, oh, I sense something, I sense it too. And then Anakin just runs in the room with his lightsaber and starts swinging it around, and he somehow doesn't hit Padme.
He doesn't even scorch her blankets.
No! It's like, either he is very precise, which I mean, he's got the Force, yeah, I'm sure there's some reason for that, but...
Muy, muy big the Force.
Yeah. When later in the movie, freaking, like, they slash Obi-Wan's clothes, like, on his arm, like, when he's fighting Dooku, and it burns through his clothes, and I mean, I know those were targeted at him, but at the same time, it's like, you're right, it doesn't even scorch her blankets, and we saw one of these lightsabers literally melt through a fucking door.
It didn't just melt through a door, it melted through 4 doors. Because they close the blast doors and it's like zoop, 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 zoop.
It's like selective heating. We only heat the things that we want to heat up, and the rest of it just, you know.
But then I'm like, let's see, let me see what I wrote as a note. Because I remember because it's the droid like flies around and what actually has the bugs in it, and then it like cuts a hole through the window. And I remember watching it, and I was thinking, does it like make the glass disappear? Because it makes this square on the window but then it actually does drill a hole. But seriously, if you could just drill a hole through the window, I feel like there's such better ways of killing someone.
Why not just drop
bugs?
A bomb? Like you already showed that you weren't afraid to bomb her earlier, and now you're going to send bugs to do it.
They straight up freaking blow the ship up in a big populated area.
Yeah, drop a freaking hand grenade in there. No.
Drop a hand grenade in there.
We're gonna send some centipedes.
Fucking the drop one of those bombs that fucking blow up asteroids later in the movie. That way, when Anakin jumps through the door to fucking kill the centipedes, instead he sees this bomb and it goes boom. They just explode.
And then we get to the chase scene that takes place after that, where Anakin just jumps out of a...
He jumps straight through the window. Like, he jumps head for, like, arms first, straight through the window.
And he's holding on to the robot.
Man, I know there was a hole in that window from where it was drilled, but I imagine it's thicker glass than what you'd find on some fucking window.
Can you imagine if he just like ran into it and bounced off?
That would have been a better cut.
Well, if you watch the bloopers too, Hayden Christensen falls over every chance he gets in the bloopers.
Does he?
Yes, it is so funny, and I think he's trying to do it to make Natalie Portman laugh.
Oh.
But in the bloopers, he falls over so many. It gets kind of annoying after a while.
I don't know if I ever watched the bloopers. I don't think I ever did. Okay, so I got a note here. It says Anakin jumps out of the car and lands on the killer. So after the robot, he jumps onto him. He jumps into a car, and then Obi-Wan is just fucking driving this car thing, and then he just turns and Anakin's jumped out. And he lands perfectly on the killer's car after falling from fucking, I don't even know how high.
And you got to wonder how fast these cars are moving too, because they're like flying cars. They have to. Can you imagine if he just like jumped off and just splat?
It's gonna splat because he literally jumps out of the car and falls straight down.
And people are like, "Oh, the Force protected him." It's like, it's a movie, still.
But. Because the note I have here is he lands perfectly on the car, and then all I put here is he lands on the killer's car. What the fuck? And the what the fuck is because at this moment you see that the killer shapeshifts. Like it turns its head and it shapeshifts momentarily to this weird alien thing. And I'm like, why is it not just a weird alien thing? Why is it a shapeshifter?
Well, that's the thing though, is like, especially with him jumping off the car, all this stuff. It's a sci-fi movie. You're supposed to kind of turn your brain off and kind of give it kind of the benefit of a doubt, because they're going to try to explain everything away with like, oh, it's just the Force. It's how the Force wills it and whatnot. Still doesn't make any more sense, but
no. My
favorite part of that whole thing though is when they go into the bar. And that dude approaches Obi-Wan with the whole just random anti-smoking ad that George Lucas put in that movie. With you want to buy some death sticks?
Yeah, that's the note I have here. You want to buy some death sticks? Question mark.
It's like, why would you call them death sticks though? I get it. It's supposed to be an anti-smoking ad. A little on the nose. There's not really any subtlety there.
It hits you straight on the nose with a fucking
baseball bat.
With a baseball bat. Or Danny DeVito as a golf club.
They should have cast Danny DeVito as Palpatine.
Oh yeah, that's another thing I want to say about Palpatine, is that in my notes, I referred to him as Palps at first. And then I switched at some point to calling him Creamy Sheev. Because his name is Sheev Palpatine. So I started calling him Creamy Sheev.
Creamy Sheev the groomer. I forget, does he really get any scenes with Anakin in this movie?
Not really. He's actually barely in the movie.
It's funny, though, because I don't remember. I know it's the same guy, Ian McDermott, who plays him in the original trilogy, and then in the new one. And then, like, there are people I know who were surprised that he ended up being the Emperor, and you really didn't know that?
I will say, when I was a kid and stupid, I never put it together that he would become the Emperor, but I was a stupid kid. So, but then I was like, oh, it made so much sense. And not only that, he is, like you say, he's the same actor that plays the Emperor in the original movies.
After the assassination, they go into the Obi-Wan ends up having to go to Kamino, while Anakin is supposed to go protect Padme on Naboo, and he says some really creepy shit to her.
Yeah. But the biggest problem is that they leave Jar Jar in charge. Yeah. Jar Jar takes over for Amidala and her place in the Senate. kids.
Well, what I find interesting though is you figure out this whole Boba Fett thing, and this like later on, Boba Fett is literally he's working with Dooku in the movie,
Yes.
and you see that he's working with Dooku in the movie. They not notice that their clones look an awful lot like the guy who's working for Boba Fett.
That's a good question. Does Dooku know about the clones?
No, Dooku's the one who ordered the clones to be made. I think.
Is he?
Yeah, because they said it was like a Darth Tyrannus or something, but it was really Dooku. That's from what I've gathered. I could be dead wrong. I'm not honest.
Because they made the people on Camino specifically say that it was a certain Jedi that came out, and
I think it was Dooku disguised as this other Jedi, because that other Jedi died like way back when.
Yeah.
Or it may have even been Palpatine. I know that it wasn't a Jedi, but it was someone else who was acting like a Jedi.
I figured that because it was someone that was supposedly already dead. Although
Yeah.
I really don't think it'd be Dooku, because if that's the case, I feel like that would really damage Dooku's character, that he didn't see that coming.
Yeah. Well, no, it's like I'm talking about, why didn't the Jedi notice that? Like, all these clones are clones, and he's working with the bad guy. There's got to be something weird going on here.
Yeah.
But then again, they were kind of put in a position to where it's like, well, we have an army and we're going to need it.
Yeah. I mean, it's true, because it's like the only thing they could have done if they hadn't have taken on the clones at the end of the movie would be basically the Jedi would be the only thing they could fight with.
And they would have probably all gotten slaughtered too.
Well, they did get slaughtered.
Yeah.
Right? For some reason, they all decided to jump into this big arena that's literally just like fucking shooting fish in a barrel.
I mean, we go back to the Anakin and Padme plot where they're on Naboo, and I think she kisses him at one point, and then he's like, "I'm haunted by the kiss that you should never have given me." I really want to know what all George Lucas was smoking when he was writing that dialogue, because
I don't know. It's a good question. It's so
Anakin speaks
weird.
like he's in a Shakespearean play. Padme, yeah, you were right with the Stockholm Syndrome thing, because that's what it feels like. He's holding her hostage for a lot of that movie. And then he has the vision of his mom dying, and they have to go all the way back to Tatooine. Does she urge him to go, or...?
No, she doesn't urge him to go. She tells him not to go, and he says he has to, but then she says she goes with him. She actually goes with him to Tatooine. But she doesn't go with him to the killing of the women and children. She just follows and then stays at the moisture farmer.
Yeah.
Which I guess that actually sets up Luke, because I'm pretty sure that Luke goes to that same moisture farmer.
Yes,
Yes.
that's his Uncle Owen and Aunt Beru.
Technically family, yes, because his dad's mom was sold as a slave and then married. Which actually makes things look really bad, but...
Yeah, when you say it like that. In the movie, I'm pretty sure it says that he freed her, but it's like, he still bought a slave. You just think she was cute and then buy her?
Yeah.
That sounded horrible.
It does. That's the thing. It's Watto, after Anakin finds Watto, he says, no, I sold your mother to this guy. And then, don't you know, I found out that he actually freed her and married her. It's a good thing he did it in that order.
Yeah, I was about to say, was it in that order? You find out his mom was abducted by the people.
The Hut, no, not the Huts. Tusken Raiders.
Tusken Raiders.
Yes.
And Anakin, he mass murdered them.
Not only does he mass murder them, but he immediately admits it to Padme.
And Padme still likes him.
That's why it's such a Stockholm Syndrome story, because it really, seriously, unless she felt like I'm stuck with this guy, this guy that has willingly admitted that he murdered women and children, admittedly for fucking attacking his mom, which is definitely a bad thing. Two bad things do not make a good. Back when they first get to Naboo, when Anakin and Padme get there, one of the notes I wrote here when I was admittedly a little drunk says, it feels like Anakin already loves Padme, and she seems weirded out by it. Like the actress looks like she seems weirded out
She may have just been weirded out by Hayden Christensen, let's be real.
Immediately after that is when Obi-Wan is trying to find Kamino, and for some fucking reason, the Jedi Archives don't have Kamino in it. So in order for Obi-Wan to find it, they had to add in the scene with kids that help him find it. And it's the kids that are the ones that actually find Kamino.
The kids are the real MVPs, which is why they all had to go in the next one.
They all had to go.
They were too smart for this.
What you don't know is that Obi-Wan actually implanted a memory into Anakin, and Obi-Wan was the real reason why Anakin had to kill young
Obi-Wan secretly been the bad guy the whole time.
Because Obi-Wan could never live down the fact that he couldn't find this planet. And the younglings found it for him. And then when Obi-Wan finds the planet, the only note I have of it here is that it looks like a PS2 cutscene.
It really does. The CGI
horrible.
is not very good in this.
The water looks so bad.
I will say, though, I think my favorite scene of the whole Kamino section of the story is probably the fight between Obi-Wan and Jango Fett.
That is a good fight. That
is a very well done fight scene, especially with the differing weapons that both of them are using. You know, he's got that line thing, and
it seems like it's a real scrap. It's a real scrappy fight where they're both trying to do their best to get over on the other one.
Yeah. And
I'm pretty sure Obi-Wan even uses force powers during that fight to try and help himself out.
Yeah, and that's kind of the first real glimpse of the Mandalorians that we do get, and it's a really well done scene. I really enjoy that. That's probably about the only scene I really liked from the Kamino thing, because the rest of it's kind of boring, honestly.
It really is. Honestly, the Kamino thing is just confusing as to the clones obviously look like adults, but they're actually a bunch of 5 or 10-year-olds because they have accelerated growth. So they're supposed to have the intelligence of adults, but they're actually 5 or 10 years old.
Peter hit them fast. And then we finally get to Geonosis, where the whole final act is. There is a pretty cool space battle in between that with Obi-Wan and Jango Fett. I really wish they had them both be more involved with each other in the final act of the movie, because they did kind of set up a rivalry there that was never really paid off because Mace Windu kind of took the head off the situation.
Mace Windu basically turned left. His giant dick slapped fucking his head off. But no, that scene where they're chasing him in the asteroid field is it's really friggin' well done. And that sound that the bombs make is so satisfying to listen to.
That's one of the few scenes in this movie I feel where the CGI isn't terrible.
Yes. I also wanted to point out how much I liked the world building fact that Obi-Wan's fighter is not capable of light speed. In order to hit light speed, he has to have this weird ring thing around him.
Yeah.
I really like that because it makes more sense than the fucking X-Wings have light speed. Because that's what they do in the OT. In episode 6, the X-Wings just have light speed and can fucking travel with the rest of the ships.
And the TIE fighters don't.
Yes, the TIE fighters don't. Not until episode 9.
Yeah.
When they suddenly do. Yeah, that whole scene, I'd have to say, is actually praiseworthy. That whole scene is a good scene in the movie.
But, I mean, then we get to Geonosis, and you finally meet the main bad guy of the movie, who is played by Christopher Lee in Count Dooku. And he is just probably my favorite character in this entire movie.
There's so little of him.
I know, and that's a crime. That is a huge crime, because, I mean, it is Christopher Lee. He's a fantastic actor. And the character is very elegant. He is very well written. He's very well spoken. And it makes him very watchable. And you can also tell that he's had this connection to Qui-Gon in the past, and with a lot of the dialogue there. And that's something I wish we'd have gotten to see more of. Yeah. I wish they had brought Dooku on in the first movie so he could interact with Qui-Gon a little bit, because Qui-Gon was a good character. I miss Qui-Gon throughout these next 2 movies. But it's Christopher Lee.
It's very good. I like Dooku, although I will say when I watched this movie when I was younger, which I actually don't think, this is probably the one that I didn't see in theaters. I saw it later on DVD or whatever. I was confused when when Count Dooku showed up. But I was confused about Dooku even showing up. I liked him as a villain, but I was confused about him even showing up.
Yeah.
But like I said, that's just me being a stupid kid.
There is a theory that I've heard that George Lucas had to rewrite the final third act of this movie because he originally wanted to make Jar Jar the villain. So he just threw Dooku in there.
I absolutely could see that. And it's once again, Jar Jar, it should have been Darth Jar Jar. It would have been Darth Bombad General.
I still like that idea that I was talking about earlier with the lightsaber ignites and you just hear Jar Jar's voice, "Use that in big doo-doo now." And then what even happens in the rest of this movie? You get Anakin shows up to Geonosis.
That's okay. Yeah, this is something I really was confused about in the movie as well, because Padme throughout the entire first movie and second movie is this passive secondary character that kind of does a few things, but for the most part, she does a little fight scene at the end of
the Phantom
Menace.
Yeah,
but she's surrounded by a huge guard the whole time, and she does something like she shoots the window, and she's the one that gets the guns that let them capture the Viceroy. But she's suddenly all gung-ho about going with them to this fight, and she's also wearing, the first time in the entire series, I believe she's wearing something sensible, like a one-piece.
Yeah. I do understand what you're saying with that. I like Natalie Portman in the more gung-ho role.
Yeah.
Just because, I mean, she sells it well, and she's a terrific actress, or she was. I won't get into anything else she's done because I haven't seen her anything recently, besides Thor when they had to CGI her muscles.
Yeah.
But it's like, I wish back when she was a lot younger and on a lot of these Star Wars movies, they did a lot more action sequences with her because she was very good in them. Yeah, that's...
Yeah. That's the thing. It's not that I'd say that I didn't like her in the action scenes. It's just I felt like it was a very quick change for her.
It's like a 180 shift almost.
She was suddenly like all gung-ho for going to save Qui-Gon, or I keep calling him Qui-Gon, going to save Obi-Wan.
Yeah.
Like, Anakin wasn't going to do it at first, and she was the one that convinces him to do it.
And then we get where they're supposed to be offered up to the animals for like some type of sacrifice or something. It's supposed to be like a huge execution. And the animals, two of them make sense. You have the praying mantis-looking thing with the sharp teeth that goes after Obi-Wan. Then you have that, I don't even know what to call it. It's like an angry tiger rat that goes after Padme. And then for Anakin, they get a rhinoceros.
It's a space rhino.
Yeah, it's a space rhinoceros. What was that supposed to do to him? I mean, like, go after him with the horn? Like, he just steps to the side?
It's the slowest of all of them. It's like a fucking cow, basically. Yeah.
And then we get the huge fight scene at the end where all the Jedi show up. Mace Windu gets the purple lightsaber because Samuel Jackson is very persuasive. And he has that little conversation with Dooku, which is, I mean, to me, it was one of the more interesting scenes. They're a little back and forth. Like I said, I wish we got more Dooku. Yeah, and then all hell breaks loose. Boba Fett kills the rhino.
Yeah, that's I don't
or
know.
Jango Fett. No, but I keep calling him Boba.
It's the same. It's the same character. You know, his head falls out, and Boba keeps his dad's helmet.
Yeah,
and that's what I want to say. I don't know. If
he's like. Earlier, but. That is weird that you say that, because you do see the shadow of his head falling out, and then he's got the helmet, he's doing this, while his dad's head is like 10 feet from it.
It's like, this is my dad. Well, admittedly, it would be a little dark if he was holding his dad's head to his forehead. I'm going to have to say, I bet you George Lucas was going to have holding his dad's separate head, and someone had to step in and stop him from doing that. But that's what I was saying earlier. I don't know if it was recorded, that in my memory of that of when Jango jumps down to get into the fray, in my memory he just jumps down and dies. Like, he just jumps down and fucking Mace Windu just spins around and his head comes flying off. That was my memory. But he actually does fight the rhino thing. And that's actually why the rhino was there, because it had to be slow enough to actually fight Jango.
Yeah.
Jedi.
And he one-shots that rhino, too.
He does. It tramples him at one point.
Yeah.
But he does get one good shot, and it fucking goes bleh and dies.
Which is like, oh man, that was pretty badass. That was cool. Oh, he's gonna fight Mace Windu. Oh, it's over.
And yes, that was a very quick. It also shows if Mace Windu had been the one to fight Dooku at the end, I wonder how that would have turned out.
That would have been entertaining.
I honestly feel like, because we're getting close to a big thing here towards the end is the fight with Yoda and his flippiness.
And
but we're
then
not quite there yet. But
yeah, so we get along further in the movie. Dooku takes off during this whole fight scene. A bunch of the Jedi die. Anakin and Obi-Wan get lightsabers again, and Anakin, Obi-Wan, and for some reason Padme decide they're going to go after Dooku, and then Padme falls out of the ship.
yeah, she just falls out and passes the fuck out.
Yeah, it's like,
She's like, eh.
and then Anakin's like, we need to go back for her.
And Obi says, no, it's not the right thing to do.
And then you see two clones like show up in their health and are a little bit later in the movie, so I was like, okay, that worked out.
Okay.
Can you imagine if she got captured by the Geonosians, though?
I wouldn't be more worried she'd die of exposure, just lying passed out in the middle of the fucking
She accidentally falls into a fucking Sarlacc pit. Just
I don't think, because then, Yoda's the one that shows up. Because Yoda actually goes to the planet with the clones in order to inspect them, and then Yoda's the one that gets the clones into the fight.
And we also get the fight scene between Anakin and Obi-Wan and Dooku, which, I mean, Dooku mops the floor with them. It's not even a close fight.
Yeah, he does.
And they try to...
Even though Anakin uses the patented dual lightsabers.
I mean, he started with 2 lightsabers, ended with 1 arm, so...
yeah, there you go.
Another thing that always bothered me every time I watch this movie, ever since I was little, is the scene where Dooku cuts Anakin's arm off. What was that choreography? Because they're like cross blades for a second, and then Anakin just like stretches out his arm, and Dooku just cuts it off.
Yes, he does. Oh yeah, so actually, freaking Dooku uses lightning on them.
Yeah, he does.
And I was like, oh well, that's a pretty powerful move right there. And Obi-Wan actually knows how to counter it, and absorbs it with his lightsaber. Yeah, Dooku disables Obi-Wan and Anakin. Yes, that's what I noticed. That he just stands there and lets fucking Dooku win. That's all I put. It's nowhere near as
he really does.
Because he just stands there. He just stands there and lets Dooku fucking cut his damn arm off.
And then we get Yoda walking in.
Oh God.
And I think no one saw this scene coming when this movie first came out.
No.
And the initial Force exchange is interesting. I mean, the CGI is horrible.
That's where it should have stayed.
Yeah.
Them throwing each other
and
with the Force.
And then Dooku drops that line, what was the line? He said, it's obvious that we're too evenly matched in our skills with the Force, so this would be something, our skills with a lightsaber.
So it'll be decided with their skills from a lightsaber.
Which, he delivers that line so perfectly, but then what follows is...
Why? Why did Lucas decide to have Yoda be the one fucking coming in for this lightsaber fight?
I will say, the fight doesn't really make sense. I mean, it was cool to watch as a kid, but like watching it as an adult, it's kind of just...
He's fucking Sonic the Hedgehog.
My favorite part about this whole fight scene is the sound that Yoda makes. And it's like, he's supposed to be like the old wise mentor, and he's just like a fucking blender that is screaming the entire time he's having a lightsaber battle.
Yeah. I mean, I do remember liking it when I was a kid, but it was hard to watch again. And it makes me think, like I was saying earlier, it would have been so much better if Mace Windu had shown up for the fight. If it was Mace Windu instead.
And those were 2 interesting actors to get together and do that scene with, because I mean, Sam Jackson is a legend in his own right, and then you have Christopher Lee, who motherfuckers actually killed people before. And yeah, having those 2 go at it, that would have been good to watch. That would have been fun.
Then you wouldn't have fucking Yoda Sonic jumping around like a fucking...
It's not like Arnold Schwarzenegger got high.
I'm going to attack you with my lightsaber. That would have been cool though. Like Mace Windu comes in for the actual lightsaber fight, and then Dooku pulls the shit to try and kill Anakin and Obi-Wan from afar, and then Yoda was the one that showed up to actually stop that bit. And then it became a force fight. That could have been more interesting. But, oh well, live and learn.
You know, I really wish, in just about every movie Samuel Jackson has been in, he drops motherfucker. I wish they would include some variant of that in the Star Wars movie. That's pretty much all the movie. And then Padme and Anakin get married at the end.
Yeah.
Is C-3PO officiating the wedding? I don't remember.
I don't think it wasn't C-3PO. I remember that much.
Anakin suddenly got this like robot hand, which I know that's supposed to mirror Luke, kind of, especially with the end of Return of the Jedi, where he cuts his dad's hand off.
Yeah.
Spoiler alert. Yeah, no, the robot hand actually looked pretty decent from what I remember. It didn't look very CGI'd.
Yeah. The biggest notes I have about this section was the fact that Dooku gets on his escape pod and it's like the only escape. It's only ship I've ever seen in the entire series that has fucking like these fins, these big solar things that come out of fucking nowhere.
Yeah,
and that's such a weird choice, but okay, it flies all the way to Coruscant, and then he lands on Coruscant and talks to Creamy Sheev.
Creamy Sheev.
That's how I put it. Like Dooku goes all the way to Coruscant and meets with Creamy Sheev, and the Clone Wars has begun. Everyone, like, they start showing, like, all the clones getting on their ships, and there's, like, marching, and they're fucking playing, is it called the Imperial March? Like,
yes.
In the background of it.
Yeah, it is supposed to be reminiscent, I think, of, like, the Nazis marching.
Yeah, I can see that.
That just got demonetized right there with the word Nazis.
No, okay, we're going to have to change Nazis to something else. We're just going to put a beep over
the evil stash people.
We're going to call them Siths.
Siths.
The evil Siths. Yeah, there's really not. Yeah, they get married, and that's about it. And they're back on Naboo. I'm pretty sure Anakin probably brought her back to Naboo while he was getting his arm done, and fucking locked her in a closet and told her she couldn't come out until she married him.
Well, I mean, so the scene where the second kiss scene they have, where they're getting brought into the arena, where she drops that cheesy dialogue that I am so totally like in love with you.
No, it's because I'm so totally in love with you.
Oh yeah, and there's one piece of dialogue that we haven't talked about that needs to be mentioned because it's a massive meme. I don't like sand.
Don't like sand. No, I don't like sand either. Sand gets in your butt crack.
The dialogue in this movie is god awful, really especially for Anakin and Padme.
Yeah, I have so little to say about the dialogue because it is incredibly poorly done.
All right, so let's get into the scores now.
All right, for plot. I gave the plot a 45.
Really?
I feel like that is a little bit high. But I feel like the plot itself was better. The story structure, I think, is where it really falls.
Yeah, I gave it a 70.
You gave it a 70?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, well, I'm going to take back what I said. I thought 45 was high.
I think I was a little bit more merciful on this movie than I should have been. Yeah, I gave the plot a 70. I like the plot of this one a little bit more than the Phantom Menace, because the Phantom Menace, when I watched the Phantom Menace, all I remember was just a bunch of politics throughout the middle of the movie, and in this one, there's a lot more sequences of stuff going on that gets from A to B.
I don't know. As far as I'm concerned, in a lot of this movie, so little happens, and it's so boring up until you get to the fight between Obi-Wan and Jango, and then virtually nothing until the whole big fight at the end. Like, I had some notes about the fucking factory scene of it just being a big dumb CGI mess.
Yeah.
Anything else you want to say about the plot?
No. Remember, guys, this is all subject to opinion.
Well, I think that'd be pretty obvious.
Yes.
This is objective that 45 is the correct answer for the plot.
What's next?
Next, I have a story structure. Story structure for me, I gave it a 35.
Yeah, I gave that one a 70 as well. I think with me, my scores on this movie is I was trying to keep it kind of consistent with the fact that I thought it was better than The Phantom Menace. So, yeah, I was real determined to give it higher scores than that movie because I actually paid a bit more attention I was actually able to pay a bit more attention to a lot more of this movie than I was with The Phantom Menace after watching it for like the 105th time. Because The Phantom Menace, I scored both the story and the plot at a 65.
I've definitely done that a couple times. Where if I feel like a movie is actually better, then I have to rethink my scores. But I try and go back and think, like, if I do try to put everything starting at a 50, what can I think of to make it better, and what can I think of to make it worse? All right, next up, characters.
The redeeming characters for this movie for me were definitely Count Dooku. Obi-Wan was good in this movie. McGregor did a lot better in this movie because he was in this movie a lot more than in The Phantom Menace. I think I scored characters for The Phantom Menace at, 54? This movie I gave it a 60. And those two characters I think carry the movie for me. I think the only thing that would keep this movie from doing a little bit better with the characters is Anakin and Padme. They don't really have that chemistry. They're not well written. That's what the only thing keeping it from like a 70 or 75 is those two.
I gave it a 30. I had to think because I remember with The Phantom Menace, I ended up having to give 5 points for every character that I liked, and I couldn't really do the exact same thing with this one. So I had to choose. I had to choose what characters I felt the most for, and I could really think of more characters in this one that I liked because Obi-Wan I liked. Mace Windu I liked. Even Yoda, even though he's a little bit fucking tismy at the end of the movie, I liked Yoda. I liked Jango. I liked Count Dooku. I liked some of the Separatists are actually kind of well acted, kind of okay. I felt like even though they're on screen for like 2 seconds. So there was a couple more.
And that's another thing with these movies is you have all these interesting characters that pop in and out, but they don't get enough screen time. Like Jango Fett, I think even though there was like the whole second act of the movie is about him and Obi-Wan, I still wanted more of him in the third act. And
yeah. He got to kill a rhino.
Yeah.
Mandalorians apparently are good at killing rhinos. Because that happens in The Mandalorian as well. So I gave characters a slightly higher score in this one than The Phantom Menace. Because there were more characters that I felt were better. But still bad. All right, next up I have world building.
This one, it's another good addition to the Star Wars universe. I ranked the world building at an 84.
84?
Yeah.
Okay. I actually agree that the world building was decent. Like it really, like some of the things, like Jar Jar even being put in command of the or taking Padme's position actually kind of makes sense considering they're both from Naboo. They have this equal society built up now. So Jar Jar being the politician kind of makes sense, I guess, if he's the politician of the Gungans or whatever.
Isn't Palpatine also from Naboo?
He is. That was one of the notes I had in Phantom Menace was that Palpatine is actually from Naboo. So we can blame the Galactic Sith Empire entirely on the Nabooians. So I gave world building in this one a 65. So I thought the world building was okay. All right, acting.
59. This goes back to, I think, the characters thing as well. While I did like Dooku, Christopher Lee, and I like Ewan McGregor, I like those actors. As far as acting goes, I just cannot get over Hayden Christensen and Natalie Portman in this, even though I feel like they were let down more by the writing than anything.
Yeah, I can see that. The writing is fucking god awful.
Yeah.
But admittedly, even their acting, I hated the acting in most of this movie. There was a couple of good scenes that I can think of, but for the most part, I did not like the acting in this movie myself. So
I think a 59 was generous.
I'd say a 59 is generous because I gave it a 25. Next up is special effects.
I was kind of torn on. There are a lot of really, really bad CGI scenes, but there are some really, really good scenes in it too, like the space battle between Obi-Wan and Boba Fett. So I can't really figure out whether one outweighs the other, so I just gave it a flat 50.
Yeah, I can see that. There are things that I could think of that I really liked was, like I said earlier, it also adds to world building is that like Obi-Wan's ship needed an extra thing in order to work, and it was well done when he does it. He even does a little flourish where he falls down from it and flies on the bottom part in the first time and from the top part in the second time, or vice versa, whatever. But it looks good. It looks like ship's actually flying. That whole scene is really good.
Yeah, and that also goes into my cinematography score too, because cinematography in this movie is pretty good. Yeah, honestly.
Yeah, they're and even like the creatures at the end of the movie, they're fairly well done. Like their special effects in them are fairly well done, even if they're a little odd. Yeah. So I end up giving special effects a 60. Cinematography, which I once again had to make up on the fly.
Cinematography for this one, there are a lot of cool shots in this movie that I like. Yeah, I'm a sucker for wide shots with planets and stuff like that. Also, the scene where the Jedi all show up, I thought that was really, really cool.
Yeah.
And then the cinematography on the scene again, and I think this is like probably the highlight of the movie is that scene with Boba Fett or Jango Fett and Obi-Wan in the space battle. That plays a really good role into this. I gave cinematography an 82.
I agree a lot with you. I think there's a lot of decent shots, a lot of very well made shots in this, and I really like how they have structured it. But I don't know if I can give it much more than like an average of 50, honestly. I can't think of any good arguments for it to be better than average or below average. All right, next up is music.
So I think I actually put the score in this movie lower than The Phantom Menace. I have it at a 76.
76?
Yeah.
Okay. I definitely put it as lower than The Phantom Menace because I can barely remember much of the music.
Yeah, neither can I.
Like, I don't feel like they use... The only music that I actually made a note on was the fact that they used the Imperial March at the end of the movie.
Yeah, and it's still, you still have the beginning crawl with the classic Star Wars music, and then, like you said, the Imperial March, and there are some, like, good music strewn about the movie. I think, I don't honestly remember, it's been a few days since I've watched this, but like you said, it's not very...
There's nothing really memorable about it. It's so...
But I did give it the benefit of the doubt with the classic Star Wars music in there, and that's the only reason it got 76.
Yeah. I gave it a 45 because I felt like I said, the fact that I just couldn't remember it is the biggest problem, with the exception of that one thing, which I gave it as a negative because I feel like they're trying way too hard to get that feeling of like the old Star Wars movies.
The old Star Wars movies, I think, are going to score pretty decently well as far as like score goes and whatnot.
I'm actually curious about that when we get to it.
Yeah.
Fun or entertainment?
I rated it at a 75. I was fairly entertained throughout the movie. I say that there's some of the movie where I didn't pay attention to because I've seen this movie over like 100 times. So
yeah.
But at the same,
it was your first Star Wars movie too.
Yeah.
There's also nostalgia, which The Phantom Menace was my first Star Wars movie.
Yeah.
So maybe it had more nostalgia for me than it did for.
But yeah, there's a lot of fun stuff. There's a lot of stuff that made me laugh whenever it really shouldn't, and I had fun watching it again. I really did. Like the scene with Yoda going, that made me laugh way harder than it should have.
That was your bar. All right, so you gave it a 75. I did not find this movie fun at all. I'm definitely not the biggest fan of this movie. As far as fun watching it, I gave it a 20.
Shit. I liked this movie a lot more than you did.
Apparently.
Obviously.
And I've honestly never really liked this movie all that much throughout my entire life. Like, even watching it again, just kind of, there are a couple of things that I picked up on more, like the fucking Stockholm Syndrome and Dooku being better than I remember it, because I really don't remember it much at all. And Yoda's fight being just a fucking meme of a fight. It's really just a meme. But I don't know, I just don't find this movie very fun to watch. It's not very entertaining to me.
Right.
Like, if I were to say that I'm going to sit down and watch one of these movies after we're done, it would be The Phantom Menace over The Attack of the Clones. I would rather sit down and watch The Phantom Menace. So, final verdict.
My verdict for that I typed just after I watched the movie a couple days ago, or I think it's maybe a week ago, was, despite having some much more interesting characters, this movie chooses to focus on a whiny psychopath that has some of the worst dialogue ever written in a sci-fi movie. That being said, this movie is far from awful.
Adding cinematography brought my total score up very slightly of Attack of the Clones. I'd say that my final thoughts on this movie is kind of what I was saying earlier. It's just I find it kind of boring at this point. There are a few scenes that I like, but there's just not enough to ever really make me want to revisit this movie, unless I have to.
Yeah.
Like, honestly, it's probably one of the movies I would choose to skip if I in a watch through for me personally.
So what was your final score of the movie?
So my final score got a 41.7 or a 4.2 out of 10.
My final score of this movie was a 69.55.
Nice.
Which brings our average score together to a 55.625. Which means the verdict on this movie is barely a C.
Barely a C. Which gives it a 5.6 out of 10. So, our combined scores definitely brought it below The Phantom Menace, and I think you can thank me for that.
What was the Phantom Menace final score?
6.1 out of 10. So, 61.28. And this one was a 5.6 out of 10. Well, here's a note that I put in here. I said, this is when the clones are attacking to save the Jedi. I just put in, what is this war? They have a bunch of guys just standing in a field shooting at droids with no cover. Seems stupid.
Yeah, no, that thinking.
Yeah!